It's a pleasure to welcome to the program one of my dearest, dearest, dearest friends in New York City, if not the world, and that's Reverend Joseph Ben-David. He's been a guest many times on the program. I count him one of my dearest friends and inspirations. He's had an extremely interesting, oftentimes trying life experience, and he's also managed to put together a great deal of thinking in a very comprehensive and philosophical way about the human condition. And we're going to try and see if we can't get some of that onto videotape and to share with the audience. And Joseph, is so very good to welcome you to the program.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
Again.
Again and again.
And again and again, yes. Joe, we were just sort of reminiscing. We had a meeting of ACAP last night. You were there, among others.
Of course.
Anyway, we're talking about the status of communication. And you gave a little soliloquy-like kind of thing about your summation. I want to get to that at some point in the program because you were talking about something that was very meaningful to you philosophically. And that's a very important lodestar for humanity now. And so I want to get to that. But let's share in a brief kind of way your incredibly interesting life story. You're from Czechoslovakia and so forth. And then let's get let's make sure we leave some room for you to be able to share with the audience your deepest held and very important, potentially serious philosophical reading of the human condition within the universe. But your own background, you're from Czechoslovakia, right?
I was born in Prague, in the heart of Europe, in 1920. So I'm now 94 years old.
Oh boy, you don't look a day over 50.
You know, because
it's all that good, clean living.
I don't worry too much. I accept reality as it is.
Okay.
So let me tell you, I was born in Prague, and I lived in 3 different continents: in Europe, in Asia, and in the United States.
I see.
And my major involvement was with the Unitarian Church in Prague, where I was the cultural secretary of the Unitarian Youth, and eventually my mentor was Dr. Norbert Fabian Čapek, this great idealistic theologian of humanism, who was eventually murdered by the Nazis in Dachau, in concentration camp.
Awful. Yeah, in my own personal background, whatever association I had with the religious was Unitarian. I was married in a Unitarian church, and it's a great Unitarianism is a harbinger, has been a stalwart supporter of a progressive.
It's a progressive religion, which
right.
does not believe in superstitions and prejudice and theological nonsense, but is deeply rooted in theological wisdom and theological rationality.
Right.
And then I was when the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia.
Horrible.
I had to flee, and we bribed the Nazis, and they actually helped us to get out.
I think your story, I've heard it. I don't want you to spell it out, but I think it would make one hell of a motion picture made by Hollywood.
Well, it's...
because you were just ahead of them. You got on a ship and you had to say... well, spell it out. I'm sorry. I got ahead of the story.
I'm sort of a witness to a very dramatic part of history.
Yeah.
And I had nothing to do with it. It sort of made me, move. And so I ended up eventually in Palestine after being in a detention camp, by the British and so on. And in Palestine, I tried to establish peace between the Arabs and the Jews.
That's a pretty tough call.
And I was using the Unitarian ethics and philosophy to establish a working relationship, a dialogical relationship.
Right.
And that brought me together with Martin Buber.
Yeah, the giant.
He was the greatest Jewish and in many ways universal philosopher of that time.
Famous book is I and Thou,
among
others.
Yes,
the way that you can relate to another human being as an it or as a thou, and dialogue, deep dialogue.
That's correct.
Called for.
That's correct.
Right.
And so when everything turned against Buber, because the right-wing political forces in Israel, the Jews took over.
Was that Jabotinsky?
Jabotinsky and Begin and now Netanyahu. And they are controlling the situation, and the reconciliation with the Palestinians at this moment is impossible. I was selected in Martin Buber's house to promote their organization, which was called Ichut, the Union, in the United States. And I was doing it for about 4 or 5 years, as a volunteer, but full-time.
Yeah. Okay.
And eventually, the situation reached a point where reconciliation is impossible.
You think
at this point?
Do you think it's reached that point now?
At this point,
was it impossible from the outset?
Well, it was possible at one time. It was one time before, before these right-wing political forces became dominant.
Who would have, in that early stage, 48 almost, And, and who would have represented, let's say, something closer to what you were thinking might be? Would it Ben-Gurion or not?
No, not Ben-Gurion, but there were some other...
Magnus?
Well, Judah Magnus, of course, was the main person. As a matter of fact, I have spoken. He eventually, after the establishment of the State of Israel, he left, came back to the United States, and his friend, rabbi, told me that he said, I have left Israel because I didn't want to be assassinated and bring shame on the head of the Jewish people.
Wow.
That's what, So nobody knows that I'm the only one who knows that he made that statement because that rabbi told me.
Okay, right.
And so I was trying and trying and trying until I got to the point where I see that because of the close cooperation between the United States and Israel, peace with the Palestinians is impossible. See? That I withdrew, and for the time being, I am not involved at all in the Arab-Israeli problem, in the Palestine-Israel problem.
Your own...
because nothing can be done at this point. See, this is...
I know. Are you talking... when you left and came here? Or
no,
are you talking
I'm
now?
Talking about now.
Now.
Right. So now I'm not involved anymore in that, and
But you have thoughts about it.
Pardon?
You have thoughts about the situation now.
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. So I redirected my life completely in a different direction.
Okay.
And that direction is preventing the really very serious dangers to human civilization. Because
they're very real. Yeah.
We have reached a point now where the decline of civilization is a continuing process. And if that process will not be stopped, some terrible consequences will follow.
Okay, that's a lot said.
Well, I tell you what.
Yeah.
Bertrand Russell and Albert Schweitzer.
Bertrand Russell, God bless him, yeah.
Yeah, I cooperated with Bertrand Russell too.
Oh, you did?
He made me the first chairman of the New York Bertrand Russell Peace Foundation.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
He was a giant. He and who was the guy he worked with? Whitehead? They wrote Principia Mathematica?
Whitehead was the founder of process theology.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I never met him. No.
But they wrote Principia Mathematica, a major work.
Yeah, he was a mathematician, but then he became also a theologian who created the process theology.
I didn't know that.
Which is the major advancement in theology, where God is not considered a person up in the sky, but God is a process. See, that's why it's called a process. In other words, it's not a being, but it's being in itself on the highest ethical and spiritual level.
I think we want to get to that.
So it's rational. Right.
Okay, yeah.
So, now I'm devoting my life to introduce a rational, emotive concept of God.
That's not a small matter.
And I tell you why.
Yes, please.
I have been involved in my life in many different human rights and civil rights projects.
Absolutely.
But as important as they are, where people are suffering terribly and are dying and so on, it's secondary. It's secondary because it does not solve the basic problem, namely stopping the decline of civilization. And that is the issue that interests me most, because I mentioned Bertrand Russell and Albert Schweitzer. They said that there are three basic conditions for the future of humankind. One is nuclear devastation.
We could spell that out. It adds a whole new dimension to realpolitik.
Well, sure. Yeah. The second is a global dictatorship. And the third alternative is the emergence of a democratic humanism.
Democratic humanism.
Yeah. Now, the democratic humanism is out. Because we are not moving towards a democratic humanism. What we are moving towards is a great danger of nuclear war, which I think is not going to happen, but may happen, and some people believe that it's inevitable, but I don't. But the global dictatorship is something that is probably going to happen. And the question is, how can that be stopped? Because it's self-defeating. See, now, historically speaking, there was a point of departure where one direction was towards socialism and, so to say, good communism, not Stalinism, but good communism. And the other was a kind of a enlightened capitalism. And these two forces at this point are still not in a state where they can be related in a positive way. If you are a capitalist, you are against communism and socialism. If you are a socialist, you are against capitalism, you see. And the process here has to do with a one-dimensional mind.
A one-dimensional mind.
You see, most people, most, not all, the best ones don't fall into that category. Most people have a one-dimensional mind.
What can you spell out what you mean?
Well, that means that in their worldview and also the conglomeration of all their feelings are attached to one particular phenomenon. So whatever they are, they are. They are Jews, Christians, Muslims, communists, capitalists who believe in free enterprise, and they are totally obsessed with that one idea, see? And they cannot relate to the fact that there is another aspect of the same idea, and I tell you what it is. the one-dimensional mind that is basically pathological because it is obsessive.
Narcissistic
the one-dimensional mind can be only related to by understanding that there is such thing as paradoxical logic.
Paradoxical logic.
Paradoxical logic.
Logic, okay.
Now, what is paradoxical logic?
Okay.
Paradoxical logic is the opposite of Aristotelian logic.
That's interesting in itself, yeah.
Aristotle, his logic is based on the idea that A is A and B is B. That's the one-dimensional thing. If you are B, you cannot be A because you are something different. You are the opposite of it.
It leaves out emerging properties in cyber talk.
But in this process of paradoxical logic, A is A and B is B. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But A can also be a little bit B, and B can be also a little bit A.
And there's a relationship between the two.
Yeah, and not only that, it can actually B can turn into A, and A can turn into B.
That is different than dogmatic.
Now, what does that mean practically?
Well, let me ask you: that seems to be operative in the universe. I use the term punctuated equilibrium, which is, or does the word synergy ring meaningfully to you?
Well, of course.
That synergy behavior of systems, or one could say an ontology, that is, there's something more than the sum of the parts? There's a resonancy more than the sum of the parts. Does that have anything that fits in with your view of seeing things?
It would.
Yeah.
But let me go back.
Okay, good.
Let me go back to this paradoxical logic.
Okay, paradoxical.
Paradoxical logic is, Zen, for example, has a lot of it.
What has a lot?
Zen Buddhism.
Oh, Zen Buddhism. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But what I'm talking about, and this is my term.
Yeah. Good.
Is I call it paradoxical wisdom. Paradoxical wisdom means that a person is capable of seeing the A and B together and can relate, analyze, and synthesize each one of them. You see, but it's not just driven by this one-dimensional mind seeing only capitalism or communism
or whatever,
or seeing disease and health, but can see that both.
Yeah,
you see, and
that's part of systems thinking, isn't it? Or
would be
in cybernetics. Norbert Wiener had a term. He said
it would be. Of course.
Let me just say something. Every day, Joseph, I don't know about you, but every day there comes over the transom some new scientific breakthrough in every field, in every kind of direction. You get information overload.
Yeah.
And information overload permits pattern recognition between subsets of phenomena. You understand?
Right.
Yeah, that's part of, or that's another way. And again, in cybernetics, they say it's an emerging property. There are things that emerge that couldn't be seen from looking at the two parts. But when you get a pattern, you can see a synergetic or a resonancy more than the sum of the parts.
Well,
which we don't have that much thinking because the thinking is all divided down into a dialectic or zero-sum kind of viewing of reality. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I can relate to what you are saying. But what interests me as far as the decline of civilization is the paradoxical view of civilization, because civilization today is based on the highest degree of technology and science, and at the same time on the highest degree of brutality, ignorance, and political violence of a measure never before existing in history. And so if we can see this this terrible dichotomy, you see, the question is, can anything be done if these forces are so, how should I say,
reified.
Okay, you can use the word reified.
Yeah.
How do you define the word reified?
Well, I don't know. It's like you could say something mysterious made material, or you could say, in my way of thinking, you've got, like for instance, the human condition now. We are surrounded by institutions, thought patterns, political organization, economic thinking, everything, by things that have come out of a situation that's grown out of the past, with emerging steam engine brought an industrial revolution, that sort of thing. And those institutions are all around us from a past experience, when we ought to be, in a certain sense, trying to relate to a future that is a borning. And we don't have enough being able to sort of take the measure of things in a future way, but we're entranced by adhering to outdated institutions. And that seems to be, and thought patterns and propagandistic gathering of power by various entities and so forth. And you're sort of stuck in the past, is what it would be, by the drag of historical institutions to which people give allegiance or something like that. You're caught up in the already institutions and structures and so forth that have existed out of the past, when what you need is something new to emerge in the future. And evolution works that way.
Okay. If we are thinking in terms of new, I think we have to somehow analyze the basic concepts. And I would say that at least 3 basic concepts have to be considered. Number 1, economics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But economics will lead to wars, but not to world war, to nuclear world war. It will lead to internal wars, horrible wars, where people who are oppressed, discriminated against, or who will suffer terribly because of climate change. Because if climate change will, in Africa, for example, cause tremendous hunger, people will revolt, rebel. Who knows what they will do in order to save themselves, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but economics is not the major issue that leads to a resolution. Because you cannot...
To a resolution
of stopping this decline of civilization.
Well, that's the thing. If I may, I would have to keep a window upon the fact that there may be something other in the future, other than the inevitable decline of the process of which we're
part. That's what I'm talking about.
The weapons have become species lethal, apparently, but only since about the year 1970. That's current.
Yeah.
We were protected in our impotence against killing off the entire species. We seem to have crossed that line on a destructive vector. That is, we tried in 1914 when they had the demise of the families and so on. But we were protected in our impotence as a species. And then you would think there would be on another vector, there would be something equally positive that may be the result of the evolutionary development of world society. I mean, it isn't given. No, there's no absolutes. Synergies there's no absolutes in terms of the future. There are only resultants that could come synergetically, unexpected. And one of them might be is that we may be coming into a time of closing quotes on 200,000 years of human history. We may be coming into a new relationship in the universe, transcendent to what we've been as a Homo sapiens species, just as we emerged out of Homo erectus 200,000 years ago as a species. So there is a positive possibility that it would be absolutist to say it's in a decline and it's inevitable. is what I'm saying. I mean,
well, let me get to the second aspect.
Okay, fine.
The second aspect is philosophical.
Okay.
The first is economics.
Okay.
And the philosophical aspect. And there it is really the philosophy of Martin Buber that is sort of presenting a certain hope.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Because unless there is a dialogical, historical development, which means where all the opposites will suddenly develop a higher consciousness of reality because of the insight, what will happen? For example, if capitalism will suddenly realize that it has to somehow change and prevent the self-defeating just drive towards more and more and more until it becomes, until it boomerangs back.
Right.
You see? The dialogical process spells hope.
Yeah.
And the third aspect is psychological.
Okay.
See, now in terms of psychology, we are talking about masses of people who are neurotic or even psychotic on a global scene. Now, the greatest psychologist in that respect was Erich Fromm.
I love Erich Fromm.
And Erich Fromm...
I didn't know him. I knew
him.
Yeah.
I knew
you
him.
knew him?
Oh, yes.
Oh, boy,
yes,
you dealt with the biggies.
I'm like an orphan who is still alive. I don't know why.
You've kept very good company, young man.
Yeah. So, you see, Erich Fromm came up with this idea of narcissism, whereby a person becomes obsessed with oneself, loses the ability to rationally see reality
or empathize,
and is completely directed towards some kind of an aim that is self-defeating in the final analysis.
Yeah, it has to be self-defeating.
And how does it?
They would say they've walked up the way of fame and fortune.
Well, I tell you where that comes from.
Yeah.
You know the myth of Narcissus is that Narcissus was looking into a
oh, that's right. Yeah.
You know, and saw his image and was so obsessed with it that he started to love himself. That's not true. That's not according to the Fromm interpretation. There, the narcissism is different. It's the absence of parental love. And according to Fromm, most people are unable to love. They are able to fall in love and become obsessed with a person and wanting that person, you see. But because of the pain of not being really loved by the parent, the person redirects the love objects to something else. It can be a dog. It can be some kind of a sport. It can be a political personality like Hitler.
Yeah, right.
And then they are obsessed. And we have seen this, that millions and millions of Germans, normal Germans, were ready to cooperate with Hitler in his murderous way of dominating the country, and were actually killers during that period of time. The same people are living now. The same people. But because of the other circumstances, they are not killers. They are just doing whatever they are doing. So this narcissism, you see, is...
It's a mental illness.
Oh, yes.
And some people associate with a good ego, but it's the opposite of a really well-developed ego, And
so something has to be done about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I am considering what can be done about it,
Mm-hmm.
it cannot be solved through psychoanalysis. Because
Okay.
number one, there are not enough psychoanalysts who would psychoanalyze these billions of people.
No, and in particular,
Yeah.
Annie Hall, what's his name? Woody Allen walking down the street, and he'd been in psychoanalysis for 16 years. And she said, 16 years is a long time to try and get at things, you know. Against 10 billion people, that we couldn't have the time to go through that.
The question is, which power,
even if it were to work,
which power could affect these billions of people in a way which would cause them not to support the decline, but stop the decline of civilization and move upwards.
Well, that would be, I begin to think of some words like empathy. I begin to think of some words like love.
No.
No? I'm off base.
No.
Okay, set me straight.
That would be an interesting rational view. But I don't think that that will work, because you cannot convert people who are driven by all these neurotic feelings of prejudice, hate, and so on, to love. You can't tell them.
People who are directed by what? I mean, you're talking. You said neurosis. Neurosis
you
one
cannot
thing,
tell them,
psychosis is
no,
another.
stop hating or stop being prejudiced and start loving. You can't do that. See, because they just it wouldn't work.
Okay.
So what is the deepest source of human reactiveness to their approach to life in general? Now, what is it?
I don't know.
Well,
you
I know.
Use the word God.
I know what I use.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the major factors in terms of consciousness, in terms of behavior, is religion.
Well,
we have to understand.
A two-edged sword, but it is.
No. Wait, let me finish,
So,
because otherwise I won't be able to explain.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You see, when it comes to religion, there are two types of religion. There is organized religion, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and so on. Each one of them believing in a different kind of what they call God, or gods, you see, very often opposing each other, even violently, like the Christians during the Crusades were just murdering the Muslims on a big scale and so on.
God mit uns is on the belt of all the soldiers.
Well, and you know, now Catholicism by opposing abortion is supporting actually the abortionists, you know, and killing pregnant women who are and so on and so forth. So you have organized religion, and then you have personal religion. Now, personal religion is something completely different. Personal religion means the conglomeration of thoughts and feelings of a person about death, which changes history, which changes circumstances, which has an effect on the process of reality, and which is, so to say, also representing the highest values of a person.
Well, I think of Becker and, you know, death. The denial of death, the major
but
book.
I don't want
you
to
don't
go
want to
into
go
that.
to Becker.
No, because we will move away from the concept.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So you have organized religion and you have personal religion. Now, when it comes to personal religion, it's like a mosaic. a huge mosaic where all these different billions of people have their own, approaches and prejudices and so on. The question is, how can a spiritual movement develop that would, so to say, synchronistically unify the people in spite of the diversity and the opposition of the various kinds of feelings and opinions that they have. Now, I've given a lot of thought to
I know
that,
you have over a long
and
life.
I came to the conclusion that there are two things that are necessary to develop a kind of a spiritual movement that would have an effect on this decline of civilization. And what is necessary are two things. Number one, there has to be a movement that is based on people power, which is based on the interest of human beings in the universal sense. In other words, what is really creative in the interest of people, but in a universal context, because you cannot divide human beings from the, so to say, cosmic sphere. We are part of the universe. We are not just isolated animals. We are more than that.
Absolutely.
See, with our mind and spirit, right? So this is the one thing, a movement that would represent people power, but not just as a power, but as a process, as a creative process. And secondly, there has to be some kind of a charismatic personality which makes the people concentrate on the voice of this spiritual dynamic.
Awakening?
It has to be a person, and every great religion started out with a person and was later on perverted.
Yes.
And actually, eventually even turned against, can you think that Jesus would be going to the Muslim countries during the Crusades and murdering Muslims? Right? The Prophet Muhammad, if you know his life history, it was a great dramatic process, see? So what is necessary would be concentration on a particular person. Who that person would be, nobody knows.
Could I just
but it would have to emerge.
Could you have a Napoleon or a Hitler as a charismatic person?
In a negative sense,
yes. In a negative sense,
but I'm talking now about a positive
person,
sense, which would be the opposite of it.
The opposite, okay, yeah.
Albert Schweitzer.
All right, yeah.
Bertrand Russell. You see? Or some people like that. But right now, there is nobody that we can think of who would represent that kind of spiritual personality. But it is necessary, you see. So,
like an avatar. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You see, the question is the question of God. Because this one word, just as a word, unifies billions of people.
Absolutely.
You see?
Yeah.
But
it has.
There is a huge, huge problem that they don't realize. That is, they don't realize that what they worship is not God, but an idol.
Okay, spell it out. Spell it out.
For example,
go ahead,
take Judaism.
Yeah.
In a
golden calf.
Simplistic way, people believe that the Jews believe in Yahweh, It's the name of God, and this Yahweh, worshiping this Yahweh is the main issue that represents Judaism, at its best. Not true.
No.
If you know Hebrew, I have read the Bible in 4 languages.
Really? What language?
I read it in Czech. I read it in German. I read it in English, and I read it in Hebrew. See, so I can compare the false translations and misrepresentation and so on.
That'd be interesting to write that all out.
Where does this word Yahweh come from?
I don't know.
Even great historians like Toynbee is talking about Yahweh.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as Yahweh. There's no name of God.
Right.
It's a tetragram consisting of the letters in Hebrew, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, J, H. In Hebrew, these letters are called Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. And it means that. It's a tetragram. It means that which will be, which is, and which was, and it's basically the idea of existential being.
Okay.
See?
Right. Okay.
So that is already in accord with process theology.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
Because if you can think in terms of being on a high ethical and social level, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, what is
it's part of the prophetic tradition.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Now, what is an idol? See, an idol is the belief in something which does not exist, or which exists in a different form as it appears.
That's interesting.
And if we believe in something that does not exist, such as this Yahweh up in the sky, see?
Well,
we are actually defeating the basic ability to see rationality, because we are believing in nonsense and call it sense.
Okay.
And so billions of people who believe in idols, such as Jesus was God, the Son of God. You see, Jesus was not Son of God. Jesus was the Son. If he existed at all, he was the son of Joseph and Mary, who had sex.
Yeah, probably.
And was you understand?
Yeah.
So, to redirect people from the belief into non-reality, into idolatry, into idols, you see, and moving them into the belief in God as, and now I have to define the meaning of God in a humanistic sense, which is the creative process in nature.
Good, I like that.
Now, what is the creative process in nature? See?
Yeah.
It's not just some kind of a simplistic formula. It's the actuality of human beings functioning on the highest level and including all dynamics of existence. So that the process the creative process in nature involves science,
of course it does,
philosophy, psychology, sociology, biology. So if you believe in that kind of God, in that kind of a creative process, you believe into something substantial, something that has the power to change reality as it is, and possibly stop the decline of civilization into a state of, so to say,
liberation?
Not liberation.
No, not liberation. No.
Declining into a state of destruction.
But the alternate
we have to turn it up.
Well, okay. I wonder if I might. I'm thinking in terms of evolution and also the fact that we're coming to understand more and more, even down to the molecular level and the nature of the universe. We've got the Wilkinson, and they got the Wilkinson telescope array that brought the picture of the shock wave with scientific understanding all the way back almost to 200,000 years after its occurrence that created this universe, 13.8 billion or 7 billion years ago, within about 200,000 years of its occurrence that created this universe. And then there came along Brian Greene and Michio Kaku and string theory, that they're very likely, as the mathematics apparently is elegant, that there would be parallel universes that would be included in our universal understanding of the context in which we appear.
Yeah.
And so forth. And it could be parallel universes, and that the occurrence of this universe could have been like wormholes, black holes connecting to white holes, and there could be other universes of which exist, which questions thermodynamics, whether it's an open or closed system, and just in scientific understanding. But we get to evolution, and then we get down to where there's an evolutionary process, and the evolutionary 99.9%, when you say decline, we're in a period of decline, 99.9, I think 99% of the species that have ever existed in the evolutionary process, once ribonucleic acid and DNA got developed in the process, 3.8 billion years ago, that 99.99% of the species that have ever existed have gone extinct. We now have it in our hands to have, by our own unique capability, after 10,000 generations, this is the 10,000th generation. About 200,000 years ago, we appeared in evolution.
Yeah.
It was only maybe 200 people, 600 people that were moving from Homo erectus, our ancestor, to Homo sapien, and we're all descended of that. And so it's about 10,000 generations, and the evolutionary process is one that we have reached a point, like a pregnancy in human beings is 9 months. There's a pregnancy period.
Yeah.
The new appears. Or in an elephant, it's 22 months. There's time involved. And we've been here 200,000 years, 10,000 generations, and Isaac Asimov says this is the defining generation, not on historical terms, about Democrats, Republicans, communists, capitalists, and all this kind of stuff that makes up human history, that James Joyce had Daedalus say is a nightmare of injustice, in a certain sense, that the weapons, which had been the basis of what gave political legitimacy to the various political organizations in all of human history, was whoever had the biggest club could beat the other on the head and conquer.
Well,
right?
That point is interesting because I'm talking now not about evolution.
You're not, okay.
I'm talking about devolution and how to stop the devolution.
Well, the devolution would lead to 99.999% of the species that have existed would simply go extinct. Well, and that's what is available to us at our hands in a material sense.
I don't agree with that at all.
You don't agree with what?
I'll tell you why.
What don't you agree with?
Whatever you said at the end about the 99%.
Oh, you don't believe it?
I tell you why I don't believe it.
Okay,
I don't believe it because I am an optimistic realist.
Mm-hmm.
This is my basic attitude.
Okay.
And
good.
as such, the question is, what can a person like me, a little person...
Wow. You're not so little philosophically, my brother.
Still, I see myself not as a great person. I see myself as a little person who has done the best in terms of studying and researching and even creating.
Yes,
right?
indeed. Yeah.
So what can I do, or what?
Yeah.
I did something which is really very close to my heart, and it is the Church of Humanism.
You're the reverend of the Church of Humanism.
I founded the Church of Humanism.
It's a great group of people,
because I think that what is necessary is something that is stronger, that in some way the humanist movement as it is today is a failure.
You think so? Yeah.
Oh, total failure, because it's purely atheistic, although it tries to speak, so to say, in terms of a reverential language, but this is just a kind of a attempt that will lead to nothing. They are still cold-hearted people, rationalists, you see, rational atheists.
Well, now, I could talk about that, but go ahead.
The Unitarian Universalists are much better, but they also don't have that vehemence that is necessary to propel people in a spiritual way to a higher level.
Or they may come upon
They do something. They are good, and I am one of them. I am a member of the, and I affirm everything.
Right,
But I started the Church of Humanism because the Church of Humanism is based on a humanist concept of God, which is a new thing. You see, does not exist. Because we start with the question of language. There is such thing as language in a totalitarian sense. See, some people will use words like religion or God, and they will say, well, the meaning of that is in a dictionary. So they are dictionary totalitarians because they don't know that different dictionaries have different definitions, and dictionaries in different cultures are very often opposite,
Funny how they always serve the political class du jour.
I have the Knauer's Lexicon, which was published before the Nazis, during the Nazis, and after the Nazis. And you look up what they say about the Jews, and you will see three completely different things.
Right. There are no absolutes. There are no absolutes, including...
Right? Then you have totalitarians who believe that the majority of the people represents the truth. If the majority of people represents a particular concept, that's what it is. It's not true, because the majority may be or is also very often wrong in some. Then you have people who are absolute exploiters of words, hypocrites, who are using the word God, or religion in order to promote their self-interest, even if it involves killing other people. They don't give a damn, you see. So the question of humanistic semantics, where we are relating to words not as, so to say, completely rigid.
You want to avoid that. You want to
definitions,
synergistically,
but seeing it in terms of respect, and particularly why people have that particular interpretation of a certain word.
And something that can be inclusive of the whole. 100 trillion cells in the human organism.
Oh, that's another aspect.
And every cell matters, and every cell is part of an overall system. Do you like the idea of Gaia? James Lovelock.
Well, that's the idea of universal unity. Because
we might have to get to that. A liberated humanity, a liberated order within an ecological context might be available to us now.
I am calling this organismic pluralism.
Organism. Okay.
Organismic pluralism.
Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
What is organistic pluralism? Everything is an organism.
Mm-hmm.
And an organism consists, because it's pluralistic, of many organs.
That's right. That's
and
right.
As long as these organs are in a harmonious relation,
right.
the body is healthy. But if one organ works at the other, horrible things happen.
Our job may be to get the human society where everybody's realizing their full potential, and there'll be a resonancy that'll inter-accommodate us to the universe at a level transcendent to what we've been throughout the human experience. A resonancy that'll inter-accommodate us to the universe.
Right.
And we happen to be born into this, the defining generation. I'm glad you've been thinking on these themes so well and present so much that should be considered by one and all. One of the tyrannies of this universe and any parallel universes that might be out there that we're particularly acutely aware of in the realm of producing television programs is called the tyranny of time. And the tyranny of time is tick, 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 ticking, and we run out of time for this program. We could go on talking, we should, 17 hours easily and everything, and you've laid out a thinking that's really important, and I thank you for such a very, 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 very well-led life that only just keeps getting better all the time. So your contributions are monumental. Happy to be able to share.
Do we have another 1 or 2 minutes?
We have just about a minute. Yeah.
A minute.
Use haiku.
I'll tell you something.
Okay, tell me.
One of the main issues that I am still researching and coming up with some conclusions is sexual liberation and enlightenment.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk about it in 2 weeks. And anyone who wants to know something about it should call me under 212-877-5662.
Do call by all means. You can't do any better than getting together with our guest Joseph Ben-David, Reverend Joseph Ben-David. Happy to have those programs. We invite you in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow, trying to get on with something, but a major force of inspiration to us all. And your duty you're suggested that you be in touch with this gentleman, this young man. He's got a lot to say, and you can see. Thank you for viewing. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Thank you, Joseph, for such a very, very well-led life. It continues and gets better all the time. Give my best to Allison, okay? Thank you for viewing. We'll come back tomorrow.